Welcome everyone to this special preview of Wisdom for a World in Transition, which is a 2-day conference taking place in Ocala, Florida on the 1st and 2nd of November 2025. So this gathering honours the legacy of Dr. Douglas Baker, a visionary teacher of esoteric astrology and ancient wisdom, and we're going to be exploring how his teachings remain very vital in today's complex world. So joining us today is Dr. Scott Olsen, Emeritus Professor of Philosophy and Religion, best-selling author, and lifelong student of ancient wisdom. Now, Dr. Olsen studied directly under Douglas Baker, whose mentorship profoundly shaped his life and work. And on Sunday, Scott will be presenting his lecture, Weaving a Path to Illumination, the quest to uncover the mystery of equilibrium. Scott, it's a real honor to have you here.
Well, it's an honor to be with you, Alan, and to be a part of this event.
I'm going to get straight into the questions. You were mentored by Douglas Baker himself, and I know that you also did some research for him for a publication. Can you share how you first encountered him and what it was like to study and to work with him?
So I first met Dr. Baker in St. Paul, Minnesota back in 1970. He was there doing a conference. Carl Weschke of Llewellyn Publishing had this North American conference, and Dr. Baker was there. And I must say, I was just overwhelmed. I was stunned by his presence, the atmosphere, even the books that surrounded him. I mean, it was incredible. And so I decided to have a Ray reading with him. And before that was even concluded, he had invited me to come to Little Elephant and to study under him. And so what happened was I decided to get married in the interim. That didn't really pan out so greatly. And so then a little bit later, 1975, I graduated from the University of Minnesota, and I was invited by him again to come, but also to study at Birkbeck College, do my master's degree in philosophy, studying Plato and Aristotle and philosophy of science. And with Dr. Baker, he would go into a state he called epilepsy. So during the night, his body would be put to sleep, literally, but his mind remained alert. And he would go into the inner worlds to work with the Akashic record and probably the Mahatmas. That's what it looks like in the end. And he would bring back information that I would then do research in the British Library and British Museum Library, and also at the University of London Library. Things like the disappearance of Colonel Percy Fawcett, or the esoteric meaning of the spleen, or looking into Carl Jung's notions of the collective unconscious, but digging deeper. And I would bring these things back to him, and then he would feed me more information from the inner worlds, and then I would respond. So it was a very, very interesting process. And he literally gave me a foundation of the ancient wisdom, um, really exposing me to H.P. Blavatsky, to Alice Bailey, Rudolf Steiner, Gurdjieff, and the esoteric dimensions of Plato. I was already studying Plato, but he helped me by introducing me to Blavatsky primarily into this inner dimension of Plato.
Wow. So what did Dr. Baker's mentorship give you that actually continues to shape your work today?
Well, he impressed upon me his own abilities, first of all, with the mastery of the English language, um, and an understanding of human character, how important that was. And so I just want to say a little bit about him before I answer that question. So he would put the esoteric wisdom into the language of the day. so that people could understand it. He was really so good at giving illustrations. He would make drawings, so it was a visual information. He would give examples from biology. I mean, incredible things. So, for example, transformation uh, of consciousness could be seen much like the mutation, the metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly, or initiation into higher states, similar to, say, the red blood cell, finding its way up into the narrow passage behind the fovea of the eye and actually looking out, seeing, and maybe participating in decisions of this being that it's within. So I carried that over with me into my own teachings. So he was really quite an influence on my character and what I ended up doing.
Mm. So your lecture is inspired by a striking line from the Mahatma Letters, if I can quote. We recognize but one law in the universe, the law of harmony, of perfect equilibrium. What did those words really awaken in you?
Well, it struck a chord, and not only a chord, but memory. As Plato would say, learning is anamnesis, non-amnesia. It's remembrance. Birth is a forgetting, but life is a process of remembering. And all of us come in with a purpose and an intention. And it drew me back all the way back to when I was 2 days old. And I was brought home from the hospital by my parents. And my consciousness was in full operation, believe it or not,
Wow.
hovering above my father's church, watching them carry me from this black vehicle in a blue baby basket up to the threshold of the door. And then as they approached the door, something about entering a house, a body, had a sinking blackout feeling. And I uh, blacked out and then remembered my mother's face looking up at her. But before that happened, it was quite clear that I had this purpose in life that had to do with mathematics. In the end, it had to do with Plato, beauty in nature, wisdom, but it was really the equilibrium or symmetry that I had a job to do to try to figure out. And I know how bizarre that sounds. What happens is, and there are other people who've had much more profound, both near-death experiences and perinatal experiences than mine, but a series of incidents and accidents that occurred after that. One where my father actually accidentally um, ran me over and I almost died. I had a tire track on the
Wow.
side of my head and I barely escaped the tailpipe. But there were a whole series of these. When I had my tonsils out, they gave me ether
Mm.
and I had the same sinking blackout feeling. What those events did, and there were several of them, would reawaken that memory of what my purpose is. And if you know anything about near-death experiences, and you ask people who've had these life reviews, we find out that everyone, each of us, has a purpose in life. And fortunately, I had that initial encounter with myself to begin with, that it was the principle of equilibrium that was the key that I had a duty to do my best to uncover.
Sure. I've heard you call this the golden balance. So, how does that idea unfold in your work, and how does it connect to Baker's broader teachings on harmony and higher order?
Well, it began really with the discovery of the golden section, uh, which was kind of a stepping stone, but I was building towards that. Actually, I was introduced to that at the University of Minnesota in an honors course with Dan Pedo, who was an artist, but also he was a geometer. And so I was exposed to it. But then deeper and deeper revelations occurred. And ultimately, the realization that the golden balance, in a nutshell, turns out to be how the one source of everything is the geometric mean, arithmetic mean, and the harmonic mean between the greater and the lesser, um, which are golden ratios. They're
Mm.
the two, there's a bigger one and a smaller one. And then there's squares. You square each of them, and the one plays this incredible dynamic role of balance, or what I'd call sattvas, between rajas and tamas. There's action and then there's inertia. But in the end, what we're looking for is a balance that now we're starting to realize it's rhythm. It's not just
Yeah.
action and movement, and it's not just stability, it's rhythm that one can join into in this active equilibrium. And it connects the treading of the path of return, connects to it.
Mm.
So for Dr. Baker, much of the emphasis was um, on this path back to the source that all of us are on. And this balance helps in that regard.
Wow. Yeah. So coming back to your journey a little bit more, and your journey has taken you from studying with Dr. Baker to working with some of the world's leading thinkers, geometers like Keith Critchlow, David Bohm, and astronaut Edgar Mitchell. So, did your foundation with Dr. Baker contribute to these collaborations?
Well, absolutely. It's really in the quest to know, to understand the esoteric, led me to delving into the sacred geometry of a Keith Critchlow. Keith Critchlow was uh, kind of the Buckminster Fuller's primary student. And so to get that knowledge, and from John Michel or from David Bohm while I was at
Mm.
Birkbeck working with Dr. Baker, I was also one of three students who would meet with David Bohm in his office. I mean, it was an incredible education I was getting at Birkbeck, for example. And then with Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, also who had gone into samadhi on the way back from the moon. We became very good friends, lectured, in fact, together in Florida. So all of these things are driven by this quest to know and to understand the inner, the hidden levels. It even extended into religion with Houston Smith. Houston Smith became a very good friend of mine. In fact, he did a foreword for an upcoming book,
Mm.
Divine Proportion. And all of it was driven by the initial work with Dr. Douglas Baker, which left a mark on me that will never, never go away.
Yeah, an indelible mark.
An indelible mark,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean, I know Dr. Baker often emphasized the marriage of spirituality and science. Do you see your own work, obviously, on the golden section and the unification of sciences as continuation of his mission?
There again, Dr. Baker was, really such a beautiful example of that, being having been trained as a medical doctor, but also with his um, knowledge of the inner realms, of the spirituality, and bonding them together. And early on, I realized that the Hermetic maxim, as above, so below, and as below, so above, as with the immaterial or intelligible, if you're looking at Plato, the spiritual, and then below in the microcosm, macrocosm above, microcosm below, with the more physical, oftentimes the more scientific, though science permeates both.
Mm.
What's necessary is a bond between them. Plato had pointed this out. So you need a third factor, and that third factor becomes the golden mean number system.
Okay.
That's what actually bonds it all together. And we're discovering more and more and more with that.
Sure, sure. So the theme of the conference is wisdom for a world in transition. So how do you see equilibrium, this law of harmony, helping humanity through the turbulence of our time?
Well, it seems that the key is to find the balance between the extremes. Again, I mentioned sattvas, but also finding common ground. We have such disparate polarities, and we have to find a way to bridge those polarities rather than attacking one another. I have to admit I've been guilty of that because I'm really disgusted with what's happening in the world today. But in the end, we must find the balance,
Mm,
equilibrium, and find the brotherhood and sisterhood of working together with one another.
absolutely. I mean, I know from my personal experience that Dr. Baker's teachings were deeply practical. He was always trying to guide people towards balance in their everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
How will your lecture reflect that practicality for people at the conference?
Again, that's finding that harmony or balance that is natural to us, and uh, through acts of meditation, going into an inner silence, centering oneself,
Mm,
one finds a point of balance, being careful to guard one's words, thoughts, and deeds, because that's what gets us into karmic issues and
mm,
problems. There's also the golden and silver rules that are present in all the religions, but we have a tendency to forget them. You do good and you don't do bad. You do unto others what you'd have them do unto you, not you as your nasty, egotistical personality,
mm.
but you as your higher self. That's the key. And then you don't do unto others what you wouldn't have them do unto you. It's so darn simple. And practicing kindness, that's really
Yep,
the
yep,
key. Uh, that love wisdom, the second ray of love wisdom is at the heart of everything. And finally, whenever possible, this is the tough one. I learned this in the rainforest in a deep, altered state of consciousness. We must, whenever possible, consider the other first. Sometimes that's not very easy because others may take advantage of that. But if we all were doing that, we would live in a world that was really heaven-like, rather than this purgatorial nastiness we're going through.
sure, sure. But for someone who's very new to esoteric wisdom, what's the one simple practice or perspective they can begin to align themselves with? Really, for a more fully, to align themselves with universal harmony.
Well, that's where the meditation, the silence, going inwards,
Sure.
trying to find balance within, and then one will see it without. So it's really an inward journey of silence and contemplation. And I'll just repeat, guard your words, your thoughts, and your deeds. Uh, Practice this balance, sattvas. I'll give you an example of how this thing works. For example, Aristotle, the student of Plato, wrote about in the Nicomachean Ethics the balance for courage. Okay, so what is
Mm,
courage and what is not? Well, foolhardiness, entering into a situation where you rush in and you destroy yourself, and you do no good. Or
mm,
you're a coward and you hide and you do not act. And when things, it doesn't have to be war. This can be any situation. It's the courage becomes the geometric mean, becomes the mean, the harmonic mean between those two extremes. So it's always finding that balance point if you can, but again, being very careful about guarding what we say, what we think, and what we
sure.
do. Um, Practicing kindness. Um, and I can just add one other thing about this. People who have near-death experiences, when they come back, if they've had an empathic life
Mm,
review, not only do they find out, oh, this was my soul's purpose, but they find out that the key to everything is love. And it's
yeah,
the love, the interdependence, everything is in this together. It's like a giant hologram, and each part, as David Bohm would say, the whole universe is actually uh, infused, enfolded in each and every part. And so we need to reawaken that by finding the balance within.
well, thank you, Scott. And thank you so much for sharing your story and for
Thank
continuing the
you.
legacy of Dr. Baker. And of course, opening new pathways into the golden balance and the universal harmony. So, and
Well,
if I, so, yeah,
let me add one thing.
sure.
Dr. Douglas Baker was crucial, a key in whatever I've been able to accomplish in my life. He laid the foundation for that.
Well, yeah. And just to say to our viewers that obviously don't miss the Wisdom for a World in Transition in Ocala, Florida, November the 1st and 2nd, 2025. And on Sunday, Dr. Scott Olsen will guide us through Weaving a Path to Illumination, the quest to uncover the mystery of equilibrium, revealing how ancient wisdom and modern science meet in a single law of harmony. If you can't join us in person, then please join us virtually, and you can find all of the details on our website, which of course is douglasbakerfoundation.org. Thank you very much. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Appreciate it.